Hi, my name is Rachel Shed, and I'm going to tell you a little bit more information about the BTEC Level 3 National Diploma in Forensic and Criminal Investigation. And I'll go through the entry requirements and the units that we're going to be doing on the course. Now, in terms of entry requirements, we are looking for 5 GCSEs graded 9 to 4, and we are looking at part of those 5 for a grade 4 in GCSE Science, or if you did core and additional sciences, we would accept those, or if you even did triple science, so you did biology, chemistry, and physics as separate sciences, so we'll be looking at 4s across the board. We'll also be looking for grade 4 in GCSE English language and a grade 5 in GCSE maths. The reason why we asked for a grade 5 in GCSE maths is there is a lot of mathematical content, lots of equations, and especially in the exam units, there's a lot of math skills embedded throughout, and so being able to rearrange formula is a really important skill. So we do ask for a grade 5. However, if you do just miss that grade 5 and you get a grade 4 in GCSE maths, we would be able to have a look at the rest of your grade profile and determine whether you would be able to be suitable for this course. So please do not worry if you don't quite get that grade 5. If you've got good GCSEs across the board, then we can actually decide this on a case-by-case basis. The rest of those 5 GCSEs can be made up of any other subjects, but it's really important that you have your science, English and maths at the correct level. Now, the National Diploma is the equivalent of 2 A-levels. So what this means is that you'll be doing 4 units per year. So in Year 12, there are 4 units, and they're in the orange box. And the first one is Principles and Applications of Science, and this is made up of 3 exams. So you would have a 40-minute exam for biology, a 40-minute exam for chemistry, and a 40-minute exam for physics. The biology content covers things such as cells and tissues and organelles, so building on that knowledge from GCSE. Physics involves waves, so looking at longitudinal and transverse waves, so once again building on knowledge from GCSE, but then looking at the application of those in communication, so looking at things such as Bluetooth and infrared. You'll also be looking at how waves are utilised in things such as musical instruments. And for chemistry, it's largely based around the periodic table, so knowing about the different groups and the trends, and looking at how that can be applied to different situations. So each of those will be 40 minutes each, and what happens is your scores across all 3 then get added together to give you your kind of overall score. Unit 2, Practical Scientific Procedures and Techniques, is an assignment-based unit made up of 4 assignments, and it's really largely practical based. You will undertake practicals in calorimetry, colorimetry, titrations, paper chromatography, and thin layer chromatography. And a part of 3 of those assignments will be writing up about all these practical procedures in a lab report. So you get taught how to properly structure and write a lab report, and then you'll submit those kind of as evidence that you've done the practical. The last one is a kind of a self-reflective piece of the assignment, and it'll be looking at how your skills have developed over the unit and over the course of the year, not just looking at those practical skills, but some of those softer skills that actually are really useful within science, but also elsewhere in terms of transferable, so communication, research skills. So we cover quite a lot within that. Unit 3, Science Investigation Skills, is once again another exam unit, but this one is called a set task. The reason for this is that there is a task that you undertake before your exam. So you will be provided some data on a practical, and you get 45 minutes to review that data. Now that data can come from biology practicals, and topics could include diffusion and enzymes and plants. It could be something chemistry based, for instance, on like fuels, or it could be physics based on circuits. So you have no idea what type of practical it is. So what you do is you undertake lessons across all these areas across biology, chemistry and physics, and do lots of practical work in preparation. So you then get the 45 minutes before the exam to review the data. When you're in the exam, you then have an hour and a half. It's made up of 2 sections. The first section is mostly to do with the practical itself. So you have to write up a table of results, do a graph, answer questions on things such as variables, sort of describing the trends and patterns of what you've seen in terms of the data, and how you could further improve the investigation. So it's very sort of science, kind of generic science method kind of involved. The second part is made up of 2 questions. The first question is that you have to plan an investigation, and they give you a topic that you have to plan, and you have to write out and say how you would undertake that practical, sort of health and safety risks, and kind of what equipment you would use and why you would use it. And the last question in that exam is looking at a practical, and once again these could be biology, chemistry or physics based, and evaluating it, so going through the method, the results and the conclusion, kind of pulling it apart and saying what haven't been done properly, how you would do it better, and actually, is their results correct, are their conclusion correct. And the last one is getting really ready for this forensics, is forensic investigation procedures in practice. And this is a really exciting unit. So first of all, you will have to undertake a mock crime scene. And normally how I would do this is doing an indoor and an outdoor mock crime scene, because they are very, very different in how you would process those crime scenes. So you would do indoor and outdoor, and within that crime scene, okay, you would have to decide the search patterns you were going to use to search that crime scene. You would then have to put out evidence markers. When you locate any evidence, you'll have to package and collect that evidence up. And then the next part is about analysing forensic evidence. So bringing all that evidence back to the lab and undertaking some actual analysis on it. So we will be looking at different types of biological evidence, including things such as hairs and bones and DNA. There will be some more chemical based evidence, looking at drugs and sort of toxicology specimens. And then there will be some more physical evidence, and that will be things such as ballistics, so looking at bullets from guns, looking at footprints and tool marks. So really looking across all the very different types of forensic evidence that there may be. And lastly, you would then, for your last assignment, so there's 3 assignments, sorry, you then write up a witness statement. So you'll get taught how to properly structure and write up a witness statement. And this is all about the analysis that you have done across 6 different pieces of evidence, and really breaking it down, what you did and the science behind those methods, and what conclusions can you make. Now in year 13, that's where we get a bit more kind of specialised in terms of the forensics units and some of those sort of more criminal investigation and criminology based exams. So Unit 5 applications of criminology, this is a 3-hour exam, okay? So what you will do is you'll learn lots of things about theories, about criminology, and in the exam you get presented with case studies. So there will be some case studies in there, and you have to apply those theories that you've been learning about to those case studies. There's some information in those case studies that you can use as well. It's not just what you've learned, you can use what is provided. But it's quite a long exam, and these questions are quite lengthy. A lot of them are around sort of 15-12 marks long, so they are more kind of essay style questions. So that's another skill that you will be kind of learning, is how to kind of structure those answers to ensure you kind of get maximum marks in the exam. The next unit is criminal investigation procedures in practice. This one is a coursework based unit. So firstly, you learn about the PACE Act. So PACE is used for lots of practices across policing. So it's the Police and Criminal Evidence Act. and that covers things such as stop and searches, arrests. So all the stages across sort of what police have to follow, there are sort of breakdowns of PACE. So your first assignment is about the PACE Act and kind of all the different parts of it, and what, in terms of criminal investigation, what can police do, right, and can't do, so the rules they have to follow. The next one is about interrogation and interviewing. So you'll be looking at the different interviewing techniques that can be applied in police, and you'll actually get to do a mock interview. So you will have to interview one of your fellow students, and you'll have to be interviewed back. And what you'll do is you'll come together and you'll make up a bit of a scenario, a crime that you've committed or the other person's committed, and you'll actually use the techniques that you've been taught to interview one another. Lastly, the last assignment is about becoming sort of an expert witness in court. So you'll have to write a witness statement, and then you will be cross-examined, and you'll kind of get asked lots of questions based on that witness statement, and you'll have to see that if you can kind of stay true to your report and answer those questions as truthfully as you would do in court. So it's all a bit of fun, and it just gets you trying out some different things, and it's a bit more, it's very different to some of the other assignments that are just kind of written based. These are more but more practical based. The next forensics unit is environmental forensics. So this is made up of 3 assignments. The first assignment is all about human decomposition. So you'll get to learn about all the stages, what happen as soon as someone dies, and how we go from having kind of a body that is quite fresh to how eventually over time we just get left with skeletal remains, so bones. So we'll look at all the stages, and we'll also look at the insects. Okay, so insects are really, really important because they speed up some of this decomposition. We'll also look at different factors that affect the speed of decomposition, and actually how we, in different environments, we can have bodies that potentially become mummified. So we'll look at all the different potential outcomes of what can happen to the body after death. The next assignment is about forensic entomology. So this is about using insects to determine time of death. So this is mostly about flies and maggots. Okay, which sounds a little bit gross, but don't worry, you won't have to be hands-on if you don't want to. But it's more about the calculations part. Okay, so you will learn about the life cycles of a fly and how we can actually examine maggots. And we're looking for something called an instar. So instar tells us how old a maggot is, and from that we can determine how long a body has been there. Because for maggots to be there, a fly would have had to come and lay an egg, and they would have then grown into maggots. And we can then use that to say that body has been dead for a certain amount of time. And there's lots of calculations that we can do around this, so that's what that assignment is based on. And the last thing for environmental forensics is a piece of assignment work, but it's got some practical work and some theoretical work, but it's looking at soil, diatoms and pollen. So you will actually have to collect soil, diatoms and pollen evidence. You'll have to come back to the lab, you'll have to analyse it, and then there are also some research tasks that you need to do based on that as well. So when we say environmental, it really encompasses lots of different kind of types of environmental forensics. And the last unit, and probably for me the most exciting, is probably forensic anthropology and archaeology. So this is my background. I used to work as a forensic anthropologist, and so this is also made up of 3 assignments, but part of it is about learning the roles of them. Quite often they actually are the same person because there's quite a lot of overlap, but sometimes they are separate within forensics. But what you will learn to do is firstly how to make a skeletal inventory, so working with bones and working with real skeletal remains and not just plastic bones. You will learn how to take an inventory of the bones that are present. Okay, you will then learn how to identify and create a biological profile from the skeletal remains. So from this, you'll be able to examine the bones, and you will be taught how to identify the age, the race, the sex and the height of that potential person. So this is really, really important, especially in areas such as mass disasters, but also missing persons. Okay, if there are skeletal remains found and the police do not know who they are, if there's no soft tissues, quite often a pathologist isn't able to do very much. So a forensic anthropologist will come in and create a biological profile for the police. So you will learn how to do that. You'll also get to do some excavation and learn how to properly excavate in terms of the archaeology part. So you will have to do a mock burial, and there will be some remains in that mock burial, and you'll have to excavate, and we'll teach you how to properly excavate that kind of burial scene and the kind of notes and photographs and how to process that as a crime scene, which is very, very different compared to some of the crime scenes you would have done in year 12. And this then makes up your diploma, your equivalent of your 2 A levels. So it's very, very specialised and very different to other courses, which makes it really super exciting. Because it's only equivalent of 2 A levels, that does mean that you then need to do something else. Now, depending on your progression routes and what you would like to go do in future, these are just some of the options potentially what you could go on and do. So, for instance, if you are looking into forensic science or forensic investigation, quite often nowadays there are quite a lot of elements of chemistry. So forensics degrees tend to be kind of heavily biology and chemistry based nowadays, and some of them are far more chemistry based. So if you do have the grades for A-level chemistry, that is something that we would recommend if you want to go into forensic science. If you're thinking maybe a bit more sort of psychology based or criminology, forensic psychology, you could look at topics looking at doing A-level psychology or A-level sociology. If you're thinking policing, A-level sociology would also be quite good. Cyber security and digital forensics is a big area that's kind of exploding. So you could always do something like computer science if you're interested in that. And there's also degrees in forensic accounting. So if you are good with your numbers and you like some number crunching and feel like actually you'd quite like the idea of solving crimes using mathematical skills, there are degrees in forensic accounting. So you could always do A-level accounting. Now, this is just a few ideas. This is not to say you couldn't choose another subject to do alongside your forensic and criminal investigation degree, but this is diploma. However, what I would recommend is that you discuss this at interview, purely because there will be some other courses that won't work so well with the forensics course. So when you do apply, then you can speak to us at interview about your intended third kind of choice as such to make up your kind of full study program equivalent of your three A levels. So we can discuss this, and if it's not suitable, then we can kind of go from there. But if we know what you want to go on to do in the future, especially if you know whether it's more psychology or forensics or kind of criminology, then we'll be able to help you with that. Now, I hope this is giving you a bit more of an idea what's going to be happening across the 2 years. It's a really, really exciting course. It's a great course, and being able to do it alongside a different A level, so doing it as equivalent of 2 makes it quite unique. Quite often with the forensics, you can only do it as sort of equivalent of 3 A levels, but we feel like this is going to give you a better chance when it comes to standing out at university. Thank you for listening.